I was at the HiveMQ CONNACK event in Chicago last week, and if you're a manufacturer, you should too. The event gathered the top minds in Unified Namespace, focused on industrial IoT and MQTT, showing how to break data silos, build a single source of truth, transforming raw data into contextualized streams, and building industrial ecosystem for data-driven operations. The headline of the event: Data-Centric Architecture as the Foundation to Enable Industrial AI. Disclosure: this is not a sponsored video. These are my personal takeaways that I wanted to share with you, okay? This was episode number 5 of the CONNACK series, hosted by HiveMQ at one of the Concept Reply offices in Chicago, Illinois. Previous editions happened in Boston, Paris, Munich, and other countries. I'm gonna talk a little bit about how was the atmosphere and how that looked like. I started with a nice breakfast area where we had a chance to connect with peers and do a little bit of networking with engineers, consultants, manufacturers from all over. The HiveMQ team kicked it off with Jens Dieters as the MC. Fun fact, he's the creator of the MQTT FX, so thanks to him we can see those nice Sparkplug Bs payloads in a readable, pretty format. Without that, it would just look broken in MQTT Explorer, and in MQTT FX it looks great in there. Now to the speaker lineup. This was my takeaway as a student of the art. Remus Pop, partner of Concept Reply. They started off very strong, one of the best public speakers that I've seen. This is actually my second time watching him live. The first time was at Prove It conference early this year in February down in Texas. He started addressing the real question behind every project. What are the problems you're trying to solve? How can you build actual value? Not just, I need a UNS or I need a data lake. He showed how to build a digital ecosystem to contextualize the data, describing UNS as a data river. I really liked that analogy. Streaming information into a data lake. He emphasized the right information at the right time, which is one of the definitions of IIoT. Real time for operations, shift or daily for supervisors, weekly and monthly for leadership, right? A great approach to win the shift, win the day, win the week, right? He also mentioned about 5 to 15% EBITDA improvements when they get this right. And he shared some other numbers in there too that was very interesting. So if he can share that presentation with us, I'm pretty sure he shared all of that in the internet. Then he shared an example of how to identify reject reasons with AI, right? So it took some time at first because they had to collect and structure the data. But if you have that ready, it would be much more simple. Perfect example that shows why you need that foundation before AI. Following up is a second speaker there, again very strong, the co-founder of Abelara, Dylan Dufresne. It was great to see someone so technical talk about leadership and architecture, tailoring his message not just to programmers but to the decision makers. He gave great examples on how to get the buy-in from all the stakeholders. Personally, I struggled a lot in the past. The technical part's usually easy. People is usually the challenge. He covered concepts like the blue and red namespace, where the blue namespace is flexible and promotes innovations right down at the edge. The red namespace being standardized and following compliance and governance more on the enterprise level. And the importance of bridging these two, validating schemas, payloads, which was a common subject in this event. He also compared top-downs and bottom-up approaches. Top-downs only tend to force the red namespace, where often leadership chooses the tools, and even if it doesn't fit well, we ended up hammering nails with a screwdriver. And on the other hand, we have the bottom-up only approach, which creates a lot of blue namespaces that are not connected, reinventing the wheel, flexible but not really integrated, and each site is, like I said, reinvented the wheel. And the best path is a mixed approach, a collaboration with a clear guidance, which he calls a lighthouse, right? And I really like that analogy. A lighthouse helps the ships navigating through the fog and low visibility. And same with the manufacturers that have to cut through all this noise in Industry 4, overpromising a lot of things, warning of danger and showing a safe path along the coast, especially, right? Along the edge, the coast. So I really liked his analogy on the lighthouse. And that collaboration, it may sound like utopia, because I am involved in several clients where IT fights OT and don't really have a collaboration. But a great example was there was a manufacturing attend the event with their head of IT, head of OT, controls engineer, all aligned, seeking external help for guidance, which is a perfect fit for Dylan Abelara, a recipe for success. I think they're doing great. They also had a car manufacturer in there, a lot of end customers, so great event. And if you watch the recording later, I think it's really worth pausing. Because why pausing? Because every moment was precisely in Dylan's speech. He covered a lot. It was a lot, and it was everything had a reason why. Okay, so you must stop what you're doing, don't multitask, and really pay attention to his speech because it was great. Okay. So following up after him, we had David Schultz with principal consultant at G5 Consulting. He delivered a masterclass on ISA 95 beyond just the part 1 hierarchy model. He covered S88 batch as well, which is where my heart lies, being especially in the industry in food and beverage. He started with the basics, with synchronous and asynchronous messages and different mechanisms, push and pull, publish, subscribe. So he covered really the basics there in the beginning. And he also touched the balancing innovation and governance, right? Now tying back to the blue and the red namespaces, even with version controls for the red namespace. It was great, but the highlight was the B2 MML and the batch ML schemas with a UNS, standardizing the nomenclatures. If you have a job order, work number, PO number, and all this actually have a standard in ISA 95, and then we can make that a gold standard on the medallion architecture, right? As a traditional MES integrator myself, I'm used to working with APIs, hitting a relational database with started procedures, data table schemas, and IDs. So I think it was very interesting to see how to apply all these existing concepts and translating into UNS. So I think it was a great presentation, very eye-opening. And last but not the least, Brian Pribe, the founder of Mach Controls. Brian is an expert in UNS, and he speaks with authority when it comes to it. He had a live demo with a physical PLC connected to a full stack from edge to cloud to prove it. The reference, because he had a booth at the Prove It conference earlier this year. So he showed how all these technologies are accessible even to small manufacturers, leveraging the open source software, which that triggered some conversations around not only about implementation costs, but also the total costs of ownership, right? So who will maintain, which sometimes is the real challenge, because on average, around 3% of the revenue goes to IT. So now that it fits the budget, the question is whether companies have the desire to actually change and adopt these technologies. So great discussion in there. We discussed how MQTT fits nice at the edge to cloud, and can be leveraged as a bridge between OT and IT protocols. At the end of the day, it's not about or, and it's an and. So this protocol and this one. So really great discussions in there. Later, the group got very technical, very nerdy, which I love it. We talked about topic size, MQTT alias to lower the overhead, payload limits, which is huge, and you probably will run into bandwidth issues first, and which goes back to my typical quote, not just because you can, it means you should. So all that, there was a real open conversation, so much collaboration, everybody was free to speak up, great community event. Now, my personal takeaways from this event, okay? So HiveMQ's approach for this event was excellent. They opened the conversation about UNS without turning into a marketing pitch. It didn't feel like it was a traditional sales at any point. It felt like knowledge sharing, showing how the technology solves the real problem. So I really like that. That's indirect marketing through education, which brings value long term. Again, a community event done by people that are really down in the trenches. So super great. That said, I did miss a few technical segments, technical points, like how to get started with HiveMQ. How to install the open source version, how to run a local broker, how to create a free online account and use the serverless cloud version, what the enterprise version adds, right? The integration with Kafka, for example, role-based access control, how to use those wildcards, user permissions, topic filters. So on IT security details, outbound ports and TLS with username and certificates for security. A brief overview of HiveMQ Edge with those protocol adapters, MQTT properties, then you can transform as metadata, right? So really more technical and hands-on. I did miss a little bit of that, and I feel like what we are all expecting, HiveMQ posts, that would also be nice to see, at least a little bit. Second, I would add a little bit of a structure on the Q&A or a closing session. If the goal was to be casual community style event, then it worked perfectly, right? But having someone to facilitate and having a closing recap session that could help connect each presentation and summarize how HiveMQ fits in the big picture, that would have been great. And my third and last point about the theme of the event, how UNS Fuels Industrial AI. The event description mentioned supercharging industrial AI with data-centric architecture, and where data architecture meets industrial AI. Except for Raymond's session, the AI part was mostly missing. We did have some AI leaders in there who contributed to the conversation that without the proper data infrastructure, even the best AI models will fail. And that is very true. The event was focused on the foundation, which is exactly where the attention should be right now. Personally, I would rather have no AI talk than a superficial one. It should always bring real value and use cases. So now let's get this data foundation with a UNS ready for AI in the near future. Models and connectors are evolving so fast, and now it's the right time to get this data ready. To me, as a student of the art, the HiveMQ CONNACK event in Chicago was a great experience. It showed how the UNS community is solid, learning and building things together. I'm doing my part in this video, contributing off stage. I hope you leave your comments, and let's keep this conversation going even after the event. See you next time, and bye.